Happiness becomes questionable the moment fortune turns and leaves a person with nothing but their own thoughts. Welcome to another story in the series From Wonder to Power, The Journey of Thought. Today, I want to explore Boethius and how philosophy confronts suffering when the world that once gave meaning begins to collapse. The age he lives in is one of quiet disintegration. Empires still stand in name, but their coherence has faded. Power changes hands without stability. Honor becomes uncertain. Security becomes temporary. For those raised within the memory of Roman order, the present feels like a long, uneasy decline. The question sharpens in this atmosphere, you see. If the structures that once sustained life can vanish, what remains worth trusting? Boethius faces this question not as an observer, but as one caught within its force. His search does not begin in calm reflection, but in the shock of reversal. Philosophy must now prove whether it offers consolation or merely elegant words. Can truth remain meaningful when it fails to protect? Can reason guide when fortune refuses to cooperate? This episode opens where order has already fractured. After centuries of building systems to explain the world, thought must now confront its most personal test. The search for meaning moves inward, toward the resilience of the soul itself. Here, the journey from wonder to power pauses. It asks whether wisdom can survive the loss of everything that once seemed to guarantee it. In the narrow cell, where light enters only through a high opening, Boethius listens to the city he once helped govern. Chains rest on his wrists, not brutal enough to wound, but constant enough to remind. Only months earlier, senators wait for his judgment and courtiers praise his learning. Now accusation replaces honor, and silence replaces applause. Fortuna has turned her wheel without warning, you see. He recognizes the pattern even as he suffers it. Fortune gives and withdraws with equal indifference. Wealth, office, reputation, and power never truly belong to those who hold them. They circulate like borrowed garments, worn briefly before being passed on. What unsettles him most is not only the loss, but the sense of injustice. He has served faithfully, he has acted with integrity, yet reward dissolves overnight. If goodness cannot shield a person from ruin, what worth does it carry? Within his confinement, an imagined dialogue unfolds. Philosophy speaks, not to comfort, but to clarify. The error, she insists, lies in mistaking unstable gifts for real goods. What fortune controls was never solid enough to sustain happiness. True good cannot be taken away because it does not depend on circumstance. Boethius begins to see that suffering has exposed a misunderstanding rather than created it. Fortune has not destroyed his good, she has revealed where he wrongly placed it. This insight reshapes how he endures his misfortune. Grief remains, but it no longer defines the whole. His reason still functions, his commitment to justice still stands. His capacity to think truthfully has not been confiscated with his title. The cell becomes a test rather than a final sentence. Stripped of external approval, virtue must either justify itself or collapse. Seen from above, this moment binds ancient philosophy to a Christian world without dissolving either. Happiness is redefined as alignment with what does not change. Fortune becomes a teacher, not an enemy. Misfortune reveals misplaced dependence. Stability is found not by resisting change, but by locating value beyond its reach. As night settles and the city grows quiet, Boethius remains confined, yet steadier than before. The wheel continues to turn. He no longer stands upon it. Night settles over the prison, not as silence, but as a widening space. Boethius sits upright on the narrow bench, his body confined, while his mind moves restlessly through accusation, memory, and loss. Voices from the court echo within him, arguments he never answers, friends who vanish, honor that proves thinner than he once believed. Consolation does not arrive as comfort, it arrives as a question. Philosophy appears not as a system of doctrines, but as a presence that speaks and listens in turn. She does not soothe his pain, she examines it. Why does injustice wound so deeply if virtue was never meant to depend on reward? Why does the fall feel unbearable if the height was never truly secure? The dialogue becomes a discipline of attention. Boethius hears his own confusion given shape in words. The soul becomes both witness and accused. This conversation does not remove suffering, it orders it. Philosophy reminds him that grief grows heavier when it speaks alone. When examined, it loses its claim to final authority. By turning anguish into reasoning, despair into reflection, the soul regains its structure. Consolation, he begins to see, is not the absence of pain. It is the restoration of proportion. What hurts is named. What endures is distinguished from what passes. The dialogue also restores companionship. Though physically isolated, Boethius is no longer alone with fear. Philosophy becomes an internal friend, steadier than those lost to fortune. She recalls first principles when memory falters, and insists on coherence when emotion fragments thought. The soul, addressed rather than overwhelmed, begins to stand upright again. Seen from above, this form reveals its lasting importance. Philosophy becomes therapy without sentimentality, conversation without illusion. It consoles by rebuilding order within the self. In a world where structures collapse, dialogue becomes the space where meaning survives. As dawn approaches, nothing outside has changed. The verdict remains, the chains remain. Yet the soul has been re-entered rather than abandoned. For Boethius, this is enough to endure another day. Between the fading order of Rome and the uncertain rhythms of a new Christian world, Boethius writes as if time itself has narrowed. Institutions that once carry learning begin to fracture. Schools close, manuscripts scatter. Authority drifts from public office into monastic walls. In this fragile passage, his work stops feeling like commentary and starts functioning as vessel, right? He carries within him the full inheritance of ancient philosophy. Plato and Aristotle still shape his reasoning. Logic remains exact. Ethics still appeals to reason. Yet the world around him no longer supports the civic life that once gives philosophy its stage. Public participation weakens. Consolation replaces engagement. Thought must now survive without the city that once sustains it. At the same moment, Christian reflection learns to speak philosophically without dissolving revelation. Boethius does not set these worlds against each other. He translates between them. Pagan reason and Christian hope meet in their shared search for order beyond fortune. By placing philosophy in dialogue with the soul rather than the polis, he adapts antiquity to a time when interior life becomes the main battlefield. This shift proves decisive. His texts travel easily into monasteries, classrooms, and courts long after Rome's political structures disappear. His logic trains medieval minds. His reflections on suffering shape Christian ethics. His style preserves the habit of rational argument when authority increasingly speaks through scripture and tradition. He does not resolve the tension between eras. He steadies it. Seen from above, his role becomes clear. Boethius stands as a hinge rather than a monument. Through him, ancient philosophy does not vanish. It changes address. The Middle Ages inherit reason not as a tool of political order, but as an inner discipline shaping conscience and thought. As centuries turn, his prison cell becomes a threshold. On one side stands the classical world. On the other, medieval reflection takes form. The bridge holds because it offers less certainty and more orientation. By the end of Boethius's reflection, happiness no longer appears as a reward granted by circumstance. It becomes a discipline of alignment with what cannot be taken away. What he gains is a new stability for philosophy in an unstable world. Thought withdraws from the collapsing structures of public life and finds refuge within the soul. Consolation replaces control. Order becomes interior rather than civic. Ancient reason survives not by resisting change, but by adapting to it. In this shift, philosophy learns how to endure misfortune without surrendering its claim to truth. What is lost is the confidence that wisdom can shape society directly. The classical ideal of philosophy as guide to the polis fades. The thinker now addresses suffering individuals rather than collective destinies. Power moves further from reason, while reason retreats into reflection. This withdrawal protects philosophy, but also narrows its field. This moment marks a quiet transformation in the journey from wonder to power. Thought no longer builds grand systems for public order. It teaches endurance within uncertainty. Meaning becomes something carried, not imposed. In the next chapter, philosophy turns even further inward. Augustine asks how time itself shapes human consciousness, how memory holds the past while the present slips away, and how evil can exist without possessing true substance. Here, the struggle is no longer only against fortune, but against the limits of understanding within the human soul itself. If this series has sparked your interest and you wish to delve deeper into the topics discussed, I invite you to the source from which it originates. This book takes you on a journey from the 7 sages of antiquity through the modern revolution with Kant and Hegel to the contemporary philosophical dilemmas of the 20th and 21st centuries. In the book, you will find significantly more details than I could present in the film, as well as space for your own reflection at your own pace. It is this very book that forms the foundation of the entire series you are watching. If you wish to explore the history of philosophy in its full version, Get it on Amazon. The link is in the description of this video.